Today I am standing in front of 614 North 7th Street. It was here that a man named Vincent Alford lived. 1 mile in that direction is the Battleship North Carolina Museum and Memorial.
Vincent Alford was a young black man born in 1922 and grew up in a household with his mother, an older sister, and an uncle by marriage. During these years, his uncle worked as a fire stoker on a railroad steam engine, and his mother did laundry. Vincent and his older sister likely also worked to make ends meet for their family, as they had only completed 7th grade by the time they reached adulthood. They lived in the segregated South and may have attended the local high school for African American children. Williston Industrial School in Wilmington, as it was known then, was the first accredited school for African Americans in North Carolina. The two may have also attended one of a number of Rosenwald schools in the area. Alford enlisted in the Navy on March 15, 1940, around the time that he turned 18. He joined before the U.S. entered the war, but at the time it was looking increasingly likely that the country would become part of the conflict. Germany and Japan were increasingly cooperating and on the offensive in Europe, Asia, and the Pacific. The U.S. had begun lending ships and sending supplies to Britain, increasing cooperation with the besieged nation. At this time, the U.S. military was a volunteer force, but for many young men in the aftermath of the Great Depression, it offered them a chance at a steady job and food, a chance to get away from trouble, or a chance at adventure, often all three.
As a black man, the only option for Vincent Alford was to serve as a mess attendant, cooking meals for the officers or attending to their clothing or other such necessities. This was as high as the rules would have allowed him to go at the time until they were changed in 1944.
Alford first served aboard the USS Prairie, AD-15, a destroyer tender, before being transferred in March of 1941. Vincent, now mess attendant 3rd class, was transferred to the aircraft carrier USS WASP CV-7. He would have joined the carrier while she was in dry dock, receiving much-needed upgrades. The ship was built without much armor and was slow, though it had plenty of aircraft for defense and attack, along with the latest radar. Certain compromises in its construction meant that it was no match for submarines. While Vincent was on board, WASP would go on to occupy Iceland and conduct numerous neutrality patrols in the Atlantic. WASP would use her status as a vessel of the United States to help the Royal Navy, currently at war with Nazi Germany. Technically a vessel of a neutral nation, she would use her safe status to deliver British aircraft to the threatened island of Malta in the Mediterranean during Operation Calendar and Operation Bowery. By the time the United States entered the war at the end of 1941, Vincent Alford was an experienced Navy sailor who had witnessed firsthand more of the mounting hostilities than most other Americans had at the time. After setbacks in the Pacific, the Navy needed all of the experienced warships it had. After the losses of the carriers Lexington and Yorktown during the battles of Coral Sea and Midway, WASP soon received orders to the Pacific. This news was likely met with some trepidation by members of WASP's crew. They knew that, unlike most other American carriers, WASP had been built using design limitations that resulted in decreased protection around her gasoline storage tanks and bomb magazines. But nevertheless, the WASP, with Vincent on board, was needed. Therefore, in the company of the USS North Carolina, she left Norfolk on June 6, 1942, and sailed into harm's way. On September 15, 1942, the WASP was taking part in the campaign around Guadalcanal and the Solomon Islands in an effort to protect nearby Australia from Japanese forces and to drive them back. WASP and Hornet, with their airplanes, were there to support American soldiers and Marines landing on the island. Meanwhile, escort ships, including the North Carolina, were there to protect the carriers. Around 3 p.m., the undetected Japanese submarine I-19 fired 6 torpedoes at the WASP. 3 torpedoes slammed into the WASP, at the time about 12 miles southwest of the North Carolina, before another hit the nearby destroyer, and a 5th impacted the North Carolina.
We're here in the Battleship North Carolina Steward's berthing area. Vincent and the other stewards on the WASP would have lived in a similar space.
The berthing compartment for Vincent and the WASP's other stewards was in an unfortunate spot, directly above the bomb magazine and adjacent to other volatile storage rooms, which were themselves hit by at least 1 torpedo.
The WASP was not at battle stations at the time, and when the carrier was hit, it is doubtful that any of the men located in the steward's berthing compartment managed to escape. Of the 193 sailors on board the Wasp who died that day, 51 were cooks or steward's mates, including Vincent Alford.
Vincent Alford was declared missing in action and 1 year later presumed dead. His name is remembered at the National Memorial of the Pacific in Honolulu, Hawaii, on what's called the Courts of the Missing, along with 29,000 other names of service members whose bodies were never recovered during the Pacific War.
Today, Vincent Alford is listed by the Battle Monuments Commission as a steward's mate second class because in 1943, the United States Navy changed the mess branch to the steward's branch. Today, the Battleship North Carolina remembers Vincent Alford and the 11,000 other men and women like him who left all that they had and would ever have upon the altar of freedom of these United States.
The Battleship North Carolina is part of the North Carolina Department of Natural and Cultural Resources.